Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you to the Marketing Institute for inviting me to speak here today. So as Tim said, I'm Director of Market Development with Failte Ireland, and for the next 20-25 minutes or so, I'm just going to give an overview of some of the things that we do in Failte, and because there's a very broad remit. And we're focused on developing the tourism industry, and tourism is now the biggest indigenous industry in the country. It accounts for about 4% of GNP and 170,000 jobs. And there's huge upside potential in tourism at the moment, and we punch well above our weight, and there's a lot of positives to take at the moment. Just take a couple of examples. Frommer's, which would be the most reputable guidebook in the States, this year said, in the world, Ireland is the best destination in the world to visit this year. The Lonely Planet also this year said that this is the friendliest country in the world to visit, which is hugely important given the whole world of conflict we live in today. So we're very much acknowledged as a leading destination from a tourism point of view. We are an island, so you have to either get a flight here or a boat, or you have to swim. And so we have a hugely developed air access infrastructure. And in the last, for example, we have more flights coming to Ireland every week from the States than Spain does. So we again, for a small country, we punch very much above our weight. And even this week on Monday on the Western Seaboard, some good news, NOC have announced for the first time in 20 years some European access. So we have flights coming in from Frankfurt, Paris, Barcelona, and NOC. So there's a lot of good things happening. And we've seen growth this year from America. It's a record year coming in from the States. Continental European markets are recovering. And Tourism Ireland, which we work with, who are the overseas promotions agency, and Mark Henry is here today, are about to launch a major new ad for the overseas market. So a lot of things to be positive about. But there's huge challenges in tourism today. And the most particular one is probably the English market, where over the last 4 years, Ireland has lost half its business. We've lost, and that's our single biggest source market. It's a huge challenge. And how we're approaching that is interesting, because we're looking at that from a cross-agency point of view ourselves, in Failte Ireland, and Tourism Ireland, the industry, our colleagues in the north, and we're really going back to first principles in terms of what is our position, what's our competitive set, what is the segmentation, and what channel plan we should have. So over the next 12 months, we're doing a really deep strategic project around England, and hopefully we will see the fruits of that in 2012 and 2013. And from the supply side, what we've seen in the last number of years is some very heavy development, and the result of that has been in some parts of the country there's more supply than demand, and that has led to difficulties in pricing and sustainability in some parts of the industry. But that will wash itself through the market dynamic over the next number of years. So who we are is the real name of Failte Ireland. Failte Ireland is a brand. We're the National Tourism Development Authority. We were set up in 2003, and our role is to sustainably develop the tourism industry. And it's a fascinating industry. It's made up of 18,000 businesses, and those businesses are accommodation providers, from hotels, guest houses, B&Bs, caravan parks, right the way through to attractions, so the Guinness Storehouse through to the Kilmainham Jail, activity providers, surf schools, kayaking companies, the Viking Splash Tour, and attractions. And so there's a huge, vast array of stakeholders and people. In my own past experience, I worked in Unilever. And while we did a huge consumer campaign, talking to consumers about everything from buying tea to frozen peas to ice cream, we really had a small number of key clients like Tesco, Dunn's, and so on. Whereas in this business, it is really a multiplicity of stakeholders, and it is fascinating in that regard, and it's hugely based on SMEs. And last evening, I attended an event just down the road there in the Good Food Ireland Annual Awards, which celebrates artisan local food production, restaurants, and it was absolutely heartwarming to see all these companies who either make food, like the Burren Smokehouse. People I was talking to last night, they employ 40 people down in the Burren, through to an ice cream producer down in West Cork, and cheese and so on, and hundreds of companies that are doing well, and it was great to see, and that's all part of who we are. And actually the chairman of Good Food Ireland, Redmond O'Donoghue, is joined us here as well today. I'd like to welcome Redmond. He's also chairman of Failte Ireland and a past chairman of the Marketing Institute. So Redmond, you're welcome. And so really talking to some of the things we do, a central focus for us in Failte has been the domestic market, Irish people holidaying at home. The reason we focus on that is it's the single biggest segment we have. 70% of all hotel bed nights are made up of Irish people. So we went back. I'm going to talk a little bit about just a small case study of what we did there. In 2005, what we saw in Irish people were spending loads of money on holidays, and it was increasing in a big way. Unfortunately, most of the spend was going overseas. So people were saying, I want a break, and all the dynamic is short breaks. So 2-3 nights away is 70% of the business, 78% of the business. And most of that growth was happening in overseas. So people were saying, I want to get away for the weekend. I'm going to go to Paris, Amsterdam, Prague, London. And so we were seeing almost no growth happening in Ireland. And so we did a lot of research around this and said, look, Jesus, we've got to get our handle on this. And what we found was, people said, I love Ireland, but I just find it boring. There's not an awful lot happening. I want to get away for the weekend. I can just get all these low fares and get on a plane and get out of here. So, of course, that was what people were saying, but the reality is that when I go back to the 18,000 businesses, there's buckets to do here. There's more festivals per square inch than anywhere in the universe. There's more things happening. There's a myriad of things to see and do, but there was a perception that Ireland was a bit boring. So we did a huge job in 2006, which was trying to reposition Ireland as a holiday destination for Irish people. And what we did was, we looked at lots of things, but looked to ask people, what do you expect in communication? So they said, well, we expect diddly-eye music, a couple walking on the beach, holding hands, golfing, of course, and just kind of generally slow. So what we did was, all of those touch points, we changed them. So we got an unsigned Dublin band called the Sultans of Mon, and we had a track called Right Here, Right Now. And in the communication, we had things like kite surfing and mountain biking and surfing and so on. And it was very sort of high energy. And I remember when it came out first, some of the people in the industry would have said, "Jesus, this is a bit radical," and because why in God's name are we promoting kite surfing? Because statistically, nobody does kite surfing. I mean, look at the size of the golf market. But what we were doing was trying to challenge the perceptions, and what the takeout of all this was that, Jesus, all these things I never even thought about happening in Ireland. And one of the other things in that campaign was, people said the older market, people over the age of 60, they're going to reject this. It's just too much for them. It's too fast. It's too funky. And they want to see something much easier. So there's this hypothesis that older people want a certain type of communication. And so we tested it and retested and talked to people. And what we found is actually older people loved it. They said, I'm never going to do any of that stuff. But you know what? I like what it's telling me about my country, and I like this sense of Ireland and how you're portraying it. And actually, we took that a bit further at the time, because there was a program called Golden Years. I don't know if anyone's heard of the Golden Years program. It was launched in the 80s. It was a huge success, about golden breaks and so on. And when we talked to people, again, who were in the golden years, let's say over the age of 65, they're saying, oh yeah, that golden years is great for my parents, for the older people. So the older people didn't buy into this. So actually, from a segmentation point of view, we stopped in an overt way talking to old people as old people, talking to them as people, and of course, as you see in recent times with the whole advent of social media and the long tail in terms of interests, people are finding what they want to do online. So we actually cancelled the Golden Year program, and we kept it the Right Here, Right Now. So where that happened, that campaign went on for a couple of years. The result of it was the market grew by about 20%. So that was a huge impact. That was about €250 million into the economy, that washed itself through and multiplied itself, and it was very, very successful. But come 2009, it was getting wear out. The Right Here, Right Now, I mean, it was driving me mad. Every time on the radio I'd hear it, there was some radio ads and so on. So we said, we need to change this. But of course, we're saying, well, how do you beat this? The only way is down. Having grown a market by 20%, at the meantime, the IMF were knocking on the door. People were saying, this is holidays. People are going to have to pull back on holidays, and the hypothesis was, the general view was in the industry was, we need to focus on value. Talk about price, because people can't afford anything anymore. So we talk about price. Maybe that will drive the volume. So again, we did a major piece of research, and we looked into that hypothesis, and we talked to people, and we stepped back a little bit and said, look, where are people at the minute? And what we found, and I'm sure this would probably correlate with some of your own work that you're doing, but first, it wasn't rocket science. What we found was people were absolutely snowed under. Their lives, this is 2009, were becoming really, really challenging. This wall of bad news that we're hearing every other day, the NAMA, NERA, IMF, EMU, most people don't understand any of that, but they just put it in a sort of box called white noise, called bad news, and it's really getting me down, and they were actually switching off to it. And then they're saying work-wise, totally stressed out. And in our research, we were finding people in the private sector and the public sector. It was right across the board. Of course, each one was saying the public sector saying, look, the private sector guys have it so great, and the public sector, and vice versa. But the point was, everybody was the same. They're saying, I'm doing more work for less. I'm redundancies are coming, and the margins are squeezing. And this was just overwhelming. If you compare the research we were doing in the previous years, this was the big dynamic. And then we're saying, so how are you spending your money? So, well, I'm spending more money in discounters. I'm really watching my cash. And so major worry for us was, of course, if the wheels fall off the domestic tourism market, we're in big trouble. The industry is going to really fall over because, as I say, it's 70% of hotel bed nights. So we said, well, where in God's name is holidays then? And they're saying, well, I'm summarizing here, and they said, well, it's changed, right? Because holidays short breaks used to be seen as a luxury, as a reward. It's like, I work hard, I deserve a holiday, and let's go here. And it was almost an end of bragging, oh God, I was in such and such a place, and it was such a fabulous time, and I did this and that and the other thing, and telling people at work, and this kind of sense of reward and almost self-actualization through this activity of having holidays. That was totally gone. And the sense is, holiday is now a necessity. I need a holiday. I need to get away. All this news is getting me down. I need to get away from it all. I need to just, and it was, okay, so what's going to trigger that? So what do you want to do on your holiday? I say, I want to have some fun. I was like, and that was probably one of our biggest challenges, because I want to have fun. I mean, how do you portray you want to have fun? It's like, so anyway, what does that actually mean? What that means to people was they want to connect with the people close to them, their husbands, their wives, boyfriends, girlfriends, their friends, and they want to have that time together. And there's really that shared time of having fun together. So based on all that, we put a new campaign together in 2010, which was called The Fun Starts Here in Ireland. And again, there was lots of activities and destinations and so on in it, but there was a subtle difference in it, because the previous campaign, Right Here, Right Now, what we had done was, really challenged things like kite surfing and so on, as I said, but what people said is, that's grand, but I can never see myself doing that. And that was sort of a drawback. Whereas the new campaign, it was people could see themselves in it. There was an older couple in a cookery school, and there was a bit of an inference, maybe they were, in a romantic break, or a couple getting away to Westport, and it's like, what's for dessert in Westport, and a group going surfing, and the girl forgets her wetsuit. And the takeout people were getting out of this was just, it's that connecting moment. In terms of building that campaign, it was a great thing to work on. We were working with an Irish cast and crew. DDFH&B were the agency here, and they did a great job. And one of the central components, again, was music. And having come from sort of the high energy, right here, right now type thing, so well, how can we do something different that would stand out? And we found twins down in Trinity there, unsigned, that were doing a little bit of work, a little bit of gigging around the town, called the Heathers, and we did a nice sort of an acoustic song, and we put that to the ad, and that became our signature. And that actual song gave us, we spent a lot of time trying to figure out which song to use. That song gave us great resonance afterwards, because it got #1 in the download charts. Ray Darcy had it as Song of the Summer, and it just went on in its own right. And I remember seeing them play at the Electric Picnic, and that was a particularly nice time to see them. Actually, the girls, they're only 19, and they were made up doing it, but it was great. But the music, again, was a central component. We backed the whole thing up with big promotional campaigns, and we did something for ourselves. I mean, we're not a huge advertiser, but we have some budget, and it's decreasing. It's under a lot of pressure. So what we did was, rather than just traditionally going to the Irish Times and saying, look, we want to buy the advertising, or 98 of MRI Radio, and saying we want to buy this advertising, what we did is we brought some of our media partners into the office and said, look, this is how much money we have, roughly, to spend. Now, here's what we would like to do. Here's who we want to talk to. Here's what we want them to think about, and here's what we'd like them to say. And Jason Nebenzahl from PhD was working with us on that, and the response was phenomenal. TV3 were great, and RTE, and all the suppliers were great, but the consequence of that meant we got about 20 to 25% increase in value, because rather than just buying spots and buying in the traditional way, we said, well, we will invest X amount in your business if you can come back with solutions. And that was a great learning, and we will continue that. In the programme, in the whole home market, you might be, if you're tuned into it, is hear a lot about festivals and events. We talk about festivals and events all the time. The reason we do that is because, going back to 2006, that key insight of people say Ireland is boring. And we actually have this. One of the unique things we have these festivals. I mean, it's just unreal, the amount of festivals and events and community things we have. And what we said was, okay, the concept is, let's create Ireland as a venue that there's always something happening in. And the campaign was, look, so we always pick different festivals and events. This is what's happening this week, this is what's happening next week, and so on, through all the mediums. And what that was doing was of course, if your festival was getting a promotion, you get a bounce. But the real thing was, because statistically most people wouldn't go to these festivals, people were hearing, "Gosh, there's loads happening. Lots happening here." And yeah, so that was a great takeout. Because in terms of Ireland, 52% of people are deciding to take a break and taking that break within 4 or 5 days. So it's a very impulse market. They're saying, "Okay, where will I go? I'm thinking of going." And so events are a big driver for us. We support about 220 events in Failte, Ireland. We work very closely with them in terms of helping them marketing, support, and working with grants and so on. Everything from the Wexford Opera Festival, the Galway Arts Festival, the St. Patrick's Festival here in town, and we're doing a lot of work to develop that as a big flagship for the country. And what we've seen in recent years is a change in the dynamic of festivals. Festivals are the biggest single driver of business for any part of the country and events, but they were traditionally funded by breweries and banks and the state. So be that Failte, Ireland, wherever else. But given what's happening in the banking sector, you've seen a big decline in sponsorship there, and some of the breweries have and some haven't changed their investment mix. So the consequence of that is the festival and event business industry is seeing a much more challenging place. And if anybody, I would just ask anybody to consider getting involved in sponsoring or getting involved or marketing with these events. They're very, very effective ways of targeting niche audiences and broad audiences indeed, and very good platforms. And we'd be delighted to talk to anybody who'd like to work with us on that. And you've seen festivals be more than just business drivers. In Sligo, for example, the Sligo Live Festival, which is about 5 years old now in the October bank holiday, has been used by that community as a huge driver to build that destination. I mean, Sligo, on its balance sheet, is one of the best destinations in the country. And Damien Devaney is here, one of the past chairmen, who's really central to driving the whole redevelopment of Sligo and development of Sligo as a tourism destination. But it is great mountains and golf courses and surfing, and it's great access, but it hasn't performed as well. So the missing ingredient is that civic engagement, getting public sector, private sector working together and getting people to, in the way you see Westport and Kilkenny and Killarney do that. So what Damien and the team have done in Sligo is use Sligo Live as a facilitator to bring the whole community together, and it's been hugely successful. And really, that's one of our top events now, and we're looking to grow that into 2012, 2013. Other events we're doing, Dublin this year, one of the concerns we have some superb festivals in Dublin, the Theatre Festival, the Fringe Festival, and others around the autumn time, but none of them have the critical mass to cut through in the overseas market, particularly in southeast of England. So we put just a concept together called Dublin Festival Season this year, worked with our colleagues in Tourism Ireland, and did a very effective campaign partnering with Aer Lingus and Ryanair, targeting that demographic in England to come over, and that's something we're going to build on. We're also in the development of another event, which is the New Year's Eve Festival in 2011. Looking at this one, the whole world is on holidays on New Year's Eve. It's a huge opportunity, and the expectation is that Ireland is buzzing. Our Dublin in particular must be, because Edinburgh is and Sydney is and global capitals, New York, are buzzing. Actually, Dublin is dead during New Year's Eve. So there's a lot of empty hotel rooms, there's a lot of flight capacity, and there's a huge hospitality industry that could benefit. So we've looked at it, and so this year we're going to do a prototype, which is in New Year's Eve, 3-day festival, and we're looking at closing College Green, cooperating with the guards and the local authorities and so on, and having an open air event with the Coronas and Riverdance and Paul Brady, and tickets are going to be relatively inexpensive, €10. There's only 5,000 of them, and they're on sale now if anybody wants to check them on Ticketmaster. But as well as that, there'll be a lot of other events around all over the city. And what we'll be doing is we want to create a buzz around the city and create a whole this is a great place to celebrate. But what we're actually doing subtly is we're bringing in 30 of the world's top tour operators to see this, with a view to the Christmas New Year's Eve 2012 for them to program it and bring lots of people here, and we're bringing lots of media here. So it's kind of this year is a trial, so we're hoping it's going to go well. But even if you don't make the event in College Green, there's lots of other stuff happening, and hopefully we'll see you around at that. Next summer we've got the Volvo Ocean Race coming back to Galway. It's a huge event. It's kicked off now. Last time out there was 142. So let me get this right now. Yeah, 50. We were hoping to have about €40 million impacting the economy at about 70, 80 million, and we needed about 60,000 international visitors to get 160,000, and it was a great driver of Galway. But more importantly, what it created was a platform for Ireland to communicate, because it was very unique the way Galway did it. So, for example, when the boats were coming around round by the Aran Islands, all the community in the Aran Islands had bonfires all the way in and all the way through Connemara. So some of the boats had media on them. So CNN were on one of the boats, and they come in, and this was like, wow. So the next day on CNN News in the States was this image. So this is the Volvo Ocean. I was greeted by these people. And I was delighted. My sister, who lives in Palo Alto, sent me an email the next morning saying, "Geez, were you there in the docks?" And it was absolutely superb. So the consequence of all that is we've the finale there this year, and that's again a good platform for the country. Next year, European City of Science is here in Dublin. 5,000 delegates coming here, and lots of other opportunity for Dublin to position itself as a real leading capital. And the other day, I met a group which is the Navy and Notre Dame. Navy are playing Notre Dame here on the 2nd of September in Aviva, which is a great opportunity. It'll be about 20,000 people coming here to see the game, which is great, and that's in itself going to be a big driver. We're delighted with that. But the big upside is CBS Television are going to cover the game live, coast to coast across the States. So we're in discussions with our colleagues in Tourism Ireland in New York. They're looking to bring in the CBS Business Show here, Good Morning America, and that's just trying to leverage this stuff. And that'll be something, again, there'll be loads of opportunity for Irish businesses to get involved in that. And an event we're working on, another event we're working on is The Gathering, and I might, if I get a chance later, I'll talk about that. Just on events, one thing, a dynamic we've seen a change in a couple of the last few years is participative events. We've seen an absolute explosion in participative events, which is basically people wanting to do things. So regular people like me and you, not doing half marathons, triathlons, and all this kind of stuff. And it's been a real phenomenon. So, for example, the Achill Half Marathon, which is just a couple of years old now. It's in the first weekend of July. It just fills everything from Westport out through Mulranny all the way to Achill Island. And we're seeing communities put this stuff together. Communities are saying, oh, well, listen, why don't we have something happening in Tramore or down in Dingle? Dingle are doing this and that. And it's great. And we're beginning to see an international audience now sitting up taking note. And I remember I was on an airplane to the States about 6 years ago, and in the In-Flight magazine, I was reading about this adventure race in the jungle in Rio, and I was like, geez, that sounds interesting. And what was catching my interest was the fact that it got so much copy in this In-Flight magazine and great images of the Amazon and all that. So I put it into my bag, and then when I got back to Galway, I found the guy who put it together. I rang him up. I said, look, here's the deal. You come over. We'll fly you over to Galway and show you around on the basis that you will look at Ireland. Can you consider anywhere around here in Connemara we could do something like the thing you did in the Amazon? And after a while, he said, okay, fair enough, I'll come over. So then anyway, the consequence of that was the first year we did this event called Gale Force West. He put it together, and the first year we had 80 people did it. And it was grand. It was just one of these things, a lot of effort, and we said, God, is this going anywhere? 6 years later, this year, it was Europe's biggest adventure race. We had 4,000 people competing on this, and Westport then have taken it, and they're running an adventure festival, and it's great to see this. And we have a real opportunity now in Ireland to become the green gym of Europe. I mean, if you've ever flown across, I'm sure lots of you have flown across Germany, it looks like just one big city at night time, all the lights on, and in Holland, and the densities there, and the urbanization of Europe. Real opportunity for us in Ireland to do that, and participative events can leverage that. So just in terms of some of our overall marketing, we focus a lot on the web, and we've the sign-off of our campaigns. We get about 10,000 people into our website every day, and it's a big energy for us. And the big future now is obviously we're looking at we're developed online applications and mobile apps and so on, and that's something we're spending a lot of energy on. As part of the Discover Ireland program, we're also changing how the tourist offices work, just taking the whole mix through. So if you go back about 5 or 6 years ago, the tourist offices were really retail shops, and they weren't great. So what we've done is we've looked at the model down the road. It's actually trail finders, where people come in and sit down, and they come in and sit down and talk to somebody who's knowledgeable about where they go on their holidays. We've taken that model and we've created Discover Ireland centres. Now we have one now in Killarney, Galway, Donegal, Mullingar, and this year we're going to be putting them into Terminal T2 in Dublin Airport, in Cork, and in Sligo. And we're looking to create about 10 of these around the country where people come in and talk about their holiday, and we're going to have absolutely superb response. About 30% of our business is Irish people and 70% is international people that come here. So that's just another part of the break. The results of that, just close out on that Discover Ireland home market campaign, the results are about, we're great. I mean, we've seen a big increase in penetration. We've gone from about 30% of people having breaks to about 36, 37. And this year, where we were saying this only way is south, we're actually seeing growth again. So it's good. And we're good. And into 2012 now, we're looking to redevelop something new for 2013. Just going to talk about touch on the other areas we work on. Business tourism, and I walked into this fine restaurant today, and I was reminded a few weeks ago, we had another event here called Founders, where we brought 200 of the world's top tech companies here with a group of Dublin and young entrepreneurs here. And so we had the founders of Skype and YouTube and other organizations like this. And that was through a unit in Failte called Business Tourism, where we identify conferences and events to come here. And that's great because business tourism people spend a lot more, and it's great, and you can see the impact because we have the conference center now, we're competing in a much different scale. But the other impact of Founders was that the Wall Street Journal came with them. So the Wall Street Journal came in, and Bloomberg and Reuters, and they were talking about Ireland's recovery, and it was a great opportunity for us to talk positively. So we have a team of people now focused on developing a sales pipeline for Ireland in business tourism, very, very focused. And we run an event, we run a thing called Conference Ambassadors. So if anybody is part of a conference or an international association or a big company, and they think they might have a contact to bring a bit of conference business to Ireland, what we do is do all the work for them. We put all the bid documents and everything else, because people would like to put their hand up at these international events and say, I'll do it. But the truth is a lot of work, and how do I do it? And if it doesn't go well, reputational damage. So this year, we've delivered about 195 million in sales through that Conference Ambassador program, where people have said, maybe I could help you, I could do that. One example would be the American Bar Association here 3 weeks ago. 1,500 lawyers from across the States came here and had a super time, and they're booked for the next 2 years. That's a huge impact for the economy, and it creates a lot of publicity. I talked about the publicity. We have 1,350 journalists coming here every year writing about the country. This morning, everything from the big stuff to the small stuff, and the small stuff, like for example this morning, we have 2 bloggers from Food Spotting in the States. It's a small website that have 1 million followers in Facebook and Twitter, and they're just very opinion leading about food. And we met them at an event last year, and they were saying, Irish food is awful. It's all like corned beef and fries. And I said, no, there's a great story in Irish food. In fact, Good Food Ireland, you would have seen that last night. So anyway, long story short, they're over here for the week, and they're going to travel around the country and blog about Ireland to this million audience. And that's just one example. The other extreme is what went on in May, which was just a smorgasbord of media activity with the President Obama and the Queen, and a huge amount of stuff went on there. And we tracked all that. And in our core markets, the impact of that was 320 million euro of promotion and advertising. Never mind the repositioning in our core market of England, where Her Majesty the Queen was seen to be. It never pictured before. I mean, that picture that was down in the English market of the Queen laughing back like that. I mean, the English people never see that. It was a really great and a great thing for the country. And when the President was here, he talked a lot about his cultural links, and I mean, I think we did well to find 8th generation Irish, but there's definitely an apostrophe there in that Obama now. But one project, and I'll just finish on this, is something we've been working on for the last few years, particularly around this. Look, the concept, one of the things is, people say diaspora. There's 6 million people live in Ireland, but there's allegedly 70 million Irish people around the world, and how can we connect with these people? And we're not too bad, we're good, but we're nowhere near as good as the likes of Israel, who have a very structured program of engagement with their diaspora. So we were working on this project ourselves, and Tourism Ireland, and the Failte Ireland Authority, and lots of people over the last few years. And the project is called The Gathering. And the Minister, Varadkar, launched this at the Globe Forum, and we're currently working up the detail. And the Gathering is planned in 2013, a year-long program of events and happenings, gatherings across the country. And what it is, an invitation to come and enjoy Ireland's vibrant culture, entrepreneurial spirit. And we have 3 core audiences for the Gathering. First of all is the global diaspora. We want to connect that with these people. And there's lots of good stuff happening on the ground. For example, in Loughrea and East Galway, there's a project called Ireland Reaching Out, where that community is actually finding who's left them and contacting them, and inviting them to come back. And we'll be rolling that out across the country. The second audience is people who aren't our diaspora, but they're an affinity with Ireland. We call them an affinity diaspora. We want to connect with them and invite them here in 2013. And the third audience, the most important audience, is the people of Ireland, because they will be the creators, co-creators of this, and also the core audience. So what we're going to do is build on everything that's authentic and good, big festival and events program of arts, sports, food, learning, genealogy, science, technology, innovation, hospitality. And we'll have three dimensions to it. There'll be the world-class festivals program, a very special interest program around education, life sciences, development aid, specific audiences, and then a big citizen-led program of gatherings organised by businesses and communities up and down the country. So we'll be working with communities, businesses, groups over the next year to try and put this together, and the outcome of it all will be to build real social capital in the country, to get people working together. Now, since this was announced in October, we have been inundated with people who wanted to come and work on this concept. And we've been working through the detail and really waiting to see what the budget situation is. But it's very, very positive. And really what we're going to hopefully end up is a whole range of strategic partnerships of people working together, be that chambers of commerce, tidy towns, town twinning, sister cities, the Marketing Institute, organisations that would like to stand up and say, look, I'm going to do something to get this country back moving again. And the super ideas. For example, at that founders event, I talked a year ago, not this one, the previous one, I talked about this concept of the gathering. I said, look, we're trying to connect with our global diaspora. And in the audience was all these tech guys. I said, if anyone here would like to work with us, have a chat afterwards. But we'd only like to work with you if it's something that's appropriate and aligned to your business. Because otherwise you're just going to be doing us a favor, and it's going to be, it's imbalanced and it's not going to work out. Whereas if it aligns to you, it's something that's going to work. So I kind of threw that out there. One of the guys that came up to me afterwards was a guy called Jack Dorsey. Jack was the founder of Twitter. And he's like, hi. He said, Jack, brilliant. I'm Irish, of course. And I said, well, geez, Jack, Dorsey doesn't sound Irish. It must be on your mother's side, is it? He goes, no, it's Darcy originally. I'm second generation Galway. He says, can Twitter get involved in this? I said, of course you can. So, when we'll have discussions with them. And another guy at that event, Dylan Collins, one of the key gaming guys in the country who's doing super well, he said, we have all these gaming developers in Ireland, and we have these gaming companies like Zynga and Facebook and so on. Why don't we have a global gaming gathering? And I said, go for it, Dylan. And so now the consequence of that is 3 weeks ago in London, Dylan set up a meeting with another chap called Rupert Lohman, who runs a company called Eurogamer, who organises global gaming conferences, and they're looking to have the global gaming gathering here in summer of 2013. And that is totally independent of us. That's just energy that's going to happen. Another example was Diageo. I met with Diageo, and they had heard of this, and they said, look, can we tell us about this gathering idea? So I told them about it and gave them a presentation. And then at the end of it, they said, that's great. So where do we fit in? Or where do we come in? I said, well, that's up to you guys. I said, I don't know, this may or may not work for you, but you have lots of properties and brands and assets that this may be appropriate to, and why don't you think about it and come back? And they did. They reflected on it. And about a month later, the Diageo team came back and said, here's how we think we could work with you. And they just blew us away in terms of all the different ways. And the core point of it all, it was all relevant to their business and relevant to us. So what I would, I'll just put another note down. A guy from Limerick rang up and said, I'm a member of AutoCAD globally team, and I think I can get the AutoCAD conference here. And we give him a little bit of help and support to the conference program. He said, so now he's just landed a conference there. I just got a call from the other day, 400 people coming to Limerick in 2012, but we put it into the numbers. And so there's just more examples. So I would say if anyone's interested in working with us in this, and if it's aligned to your business, we'd be delighted to talk to you. We'll be talking and engaging with people much more in early 2012 on this. So in conclusion, just to wrap up, as tourism really touches every parish in Ireland, and it's concentrated along the western seaboard, where it really is the only industry with serious growth potential, because the 12 Bends will always be in Connemara, the Sleeve Cliffs can't be offshore to China, Dingle can't be downsized and blended into a lowest common denominator UK operation, because tourism is based on true sustainable competitive advantage, and that's our people, our land, our culture, and our country. Thank you for your time. Gur Magat.